This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 264 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Cody, happy Star Wars Day. It's
Yes.
May the 4th as we're recording this and streaming live if you're watching on Twitch. Have you partaken in any of this Star Wars stuff? I know the big thing today for us poster fans was the release of a Matt Ferguson Return of the Jedi screen print that's been kind of all over the last few weeks for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Did you buy any of those? Do you care about Star Wars that much?
No,
Any at all?
I am sort of my toxic trait is that I am not a Star Wars guy. And so it's we talked about it on this show in years past, but Star Wars, I didn't watch the original trilogy until I was in my mid-20s. And so I don't have that sort of like youthful connection to it. I've seen every Star Wars movie. I haven't seen the shows, but I've seen the movies, and I think it's fine. I think I'm not definitely. And I told you I think I've talked about my Star Wars theory, which is that like they really only connect if you saw them when you were young. Because as a 26-year-old watching it for the first time, I was like, this is fine.
I still do think you still seem to be would have been the right age for the prequels. It doesn't. It's that kind of those things that like slip by people are often strange to me. Like our pal Kiko, like he and I are roughly the same age. I think he's a couple years younger than me, and he has none of the reminiscence for like the toys and pop culture for that time, like Transformers and G.I. Joe. He was a huge wrestling guy, which I find strange, but whatever. I do wonder if we're finally going to get a new movie. There's been talk for so many years, ever since, and I think I mentioned it to you yesterday, wondering if Rise of Skywalker totally killed J.J. Abrams' directing career, at least for now, because I haven't heard of any projects coming up with him, and then they haven't released a single movie since that film was released, and they were doing them like every other year, once a year for a while there.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think in the J.J. Abrams category, I think that he has like some TV shows he's doing, but I don't think that he has any movies lined up. And so maybe it did kill his film career. I would doubt it. His production company is chugging along, but
killing his film career is obviously that's an exaggeration, but he does seem to not be the guy people are going to anymore, at least right now.
No. And yeah, I don't know about the movies because they keep on having these movies that they announce and then they fall away. I mean, they did technically announce several more movies, one of which is supposed to be a continuation of Rey's story.
Right.
Which it was just announced that Damon Lindelof is off of that movie.
Speaking of J.J. Abrams related people, yeah, I'm not a big. I forget. You're a fan of Lindelof? Because I after Lost, I was done.
I am a fan of Lindelof, and I think for many people, both The Leftovers and Watchmen kind of redeemed the bad will that he had.
Yeah,
both
I've
two
heard
things
that.
that I have not seen, but
Same.
are on my list of stuff to watch. So I do think that the sort of like the stink of Lost and the stink of Tomorrowland and
Cowboys and Aliens
and Prometheus has kind of worn off, and
Prometheus.
the guy is kind of back in the good graces of people, but clearly not the people behind Star Wars.
Yeah, there's I'm blanking on his name. Directed Logan.
Oh, James Mangold.
James Mangold Star Wars movie announced as well, and then one that's supposed to sort of bridge the gap from Dave Filoni of The Mandalorian and upcoming Ahsoka and the upcoming Skeleton Crew starring Jude Law, which sounds like just an extended TV show, but who knows exactly.
Well, but it has been so interesting because there's always, because you think about like Patty Jenkins had a Star Wars movie that's no longer happening, and I think wasn't there a Taika Waititi?
There's a Taika Waititi one announced that's still in limbo. They actually had like a crazy logo for it. there's the Rian Johnson trilogy, which is apparently still technically alive.
Yeah.
The David Benioff and David Weiss.
That's gone, right?
Yeah, they kind of backed out of that one after everybody hated Game of Thrones. I really do wonder how much of this stuff is based on reaction to other stuff and other than it just falling apart. Because like the Colin Trevorrow thing, like the talk was that, oh, he made the Book of Henry and everybody fucking hated it, and that's how he lost his Star Wars movie. Like, I don't believe that's true. I might believe the Josh Trank one because he seemed like a crazy person.
Yeah. Oh, and they also, the Kevin Feige one is apparently not happening anymore either.
That's right. But he was just producing that one.
Right. Yeah.
There's no director. Yeah, the Patty Jenkins one, like they shot that whole promo video for it, and it went away. It is interesting how reactive they seem to have been to the fandom, both in the bad, in the course correction they made after The Last Jedi, and the good in being the reaction that people had after The Rise of Skywalker, where everybody fucking hated it. But you haven't watched any of the TV shows?
No, I've seen like the first couple of episodes of Mandalorian, and then I was talked into by Jerry Rocha into watching Clone Wars and stuff. And I started watching Clone Wars, and I got like half a season in, and I forgot about it.
You know, kids' cartoons, and my decor notwithstanding, they're hard for me to get through now. I tried doing that with, like I heard great things about Clone Wars and tried it and just couldn't take it.
And you know what I would be willing to do, honestly, is, you know, there's, I'm sure on Reddit or with, you know, Jerry and Eddie's help, I could find like the essential Clone Wars episodes that are like essential for the lore of Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett or whatever, and then just watch those and then step into the TV shows to have a little bit of context. I would be open to that. But sitting there and watching like 85 episodes of a cartoon that I don't really care about was a little bit of a tall task, and I realized that when I was watching it.
When Clone Wars premiered, and this was pre-Disney, this was, I want to say like 2008, it premiered with a film. I don't know if you remember this. It was
so.
They theatrically released the first, I guess it was like the pilot plus like the first couple episodes. I don't know, it was 90 minutes or so, and it was very bad. And I remember one of the characters was Jabba the Hutt's brother, who I can't remember the name of, but he was clearly like coded as gay, and it was in that like Lucas-y cringy way where you're like, oh Jesus, like this is like he's just throwing stereotypes at the wall here. And that's where I bailed out.
Yeah, that's fair. That sounds about right.
But I've heard it got better, and I've heard there was great stuff in there. I really enjoyed The Mandalorian, the first season of The Mandalorian. They've really, second season was pretty good. The third season was not so great. They tend to like pile on the lore. I think that was the appeal of The Mandalorian, was it was something that you recognized and, recognized as Star Wars and immediately hit you as Star Wars. But then they started like throwing in cameos and this other stuff that really sort of threw it off. And I think that's kind of been the problem lately, is that everything is, well, not lately, but from the fucking prequels on, that everything has to be connected to everything else.
Yeah. And I have seen, you asked me about the Star Wars shows. I forgot that I had started Andor.
But so have I.
But the giant Disney watermark of our email addresses that Disney throws onto everything they do, I just couldn't take it. It is like comically distracting.
They sent the first 4 or 5 episodes of that, and we did watch all of those, binge watch those, and I haven't picked it back up since. I've heard it's great.
Yeah.
I've heard it's the best thing they've done. It's, a lot of that Rogue One sentiment is echoed in Andor. I just haven't squeezed it in. I haven't felt it to be essential, I guess, because, and I guess this is part of the problem, is that the timelines are all over the place. So, my wife would ask me, she's like, well, I haven't seen this thing. Well, you don't need to, because this came 30 years before this and all this other. So it's hard to care about that. Anyway, happy Star Wars Day.
Same to you.
Thanks. Anything else before we move on to yet another interconnected universe?
No, I mean, I think we're ready to go. I'm not the person to go to for Star Wars talk, so thank you for bailing me out of.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, I brought it up, and I knew it was going to happen. All right, let's move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
This week we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I'm so sorry about this, Yoda.
Oh, please.
We're here to save the life of our friend. That is all. We paid her to help us get in and get out. You'd think that'd mean, oh, I'm gonna help you do it in a way that no one knows it's happening. But no, what she means is I'm gonna shoot people, threaten people's lives. And I know you're probably asking, why would I trust her? Well, that's a good question. The answer is, we used to be in love. Yeah, she was my girlfriend, only she doesn't remember it because it wasn't her. Because her dad threw her off a magic cliff and she died, and then I lost my temper and nearly destroyed half the universe. And she came back out of the past. There she is. Everyone else who died in the past stayed dead. Not her. Why? Was it the magic cliff? I don't know. That's some freaking Infinity Stone scientist. And some dumbass Earth dude who met a girl, fell in love. That girl died. And then came back a total dick.
You left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
This is the third in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I believe number 32 in the Marvel movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a jump off our earlier point, sort of described as a Marvel take on Star Wars, at least initially. But yeah, this is James Gunn's swan song, apparently, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as he goes to run DC. Cody, tell us about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and what you thought of it.
Yeah, and on a note, just a bit crazy to be sitting here talking about a movie that is coming out while James Gunn is laying out his 10-year plan for playing for the other team. Which is so interesting to me, actually, when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, famously, this was a movie that wasn't supposed to happen, at least with James Gunn at the helm, after he was taken off the movie several years ago at this point, because I believe he, during that time he signed off to do Suicide Squad and did that before he came back to do Guardians 3. And yeah, it is this sort of final film of James Gunn's trilogy. And, shockingly, the plot is pretty simple, which is that, in the very beginning of the movie, this isn't a spoiler, it happens in the first 5 minutes, the Guardians are attacked, and Rocket Raccoon ends up taking on some injuries that kind of put him out, and they kind of discover that that there's some kind of device planted in him that could kill him, basically. And so the other Guardians go in search of trying to find a way to undo this thing that was put on him, which allows us to get a little bit of backstory through flashbacks of how Rocket came to be, and the people who conducted the experiments on him and why, and all of that stuff. And so it really is just sort of a story about the group banding together to try and save Rocket, basically.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. And that is a good thing that is basically it, because
yes, for the love of God, thank you for a small stakes story.
Exactly. And this is something that we've talked about. We actually just talked about it when it came to Ant-Man Quantumania, where there always has to be this extinction level event that's happening in every single movie. Something is threatening the entire universe, and whoever hero of the day has to take over and prevent destruction from happening. And we've talked about it. I said specifically, I wish that for once it wasn't an extinction level event within these Marvel movies. And lo and behold, that is what we get with Guardians 3. Yes, you have to have or I guess it helps to have the background of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies to know what the characters are like, and you have to have a little bit of backstory on Gamora. I mean, you get it a little bit in that kind of sarcastic Chris Pratt monologue there, but other than that, it doesn't feel like a setup movie. It doesn't feel like a step to get to the next movie. It doesn't feel like you have to have watched 3 different TV series to know what's going on. This is a movie that exists on its own as a standalone movie that has small stakes. It's about the characters in the movie and nothing else. And I think Marvel has been dying for a movie like this because it makes it so much easier to lock into. It makes it so much easier to become invested in, and it lets the characters on screen shine, and it lets the story that it's told resonate a whole lot more, in my opinion. So ultimately what you get is a very sweet story about friendship and the lengths that you'll go for friendship, and that story is not only echoed through what the Guardians are going through, but you get a whole lot of that with the background of figuring out where Rocket came from and the people that he surrounded himself with during his earlier years. It is something where I think in those scenes, I think for some people, and this is kind of a response I've been seeing, is that your mileage might vary on sort of like if you have problems with like animal cruelty, you may find it a little bit either like squeamish or harsh to watch. It
is quite dark at points, but I mean it's not, it's to serve this purpose of the story. Frankly, it's not it's not trauma level gore like
right.
James Gunn was cut his teeth on.
Yeah, it's not excessive, and I don't think it's necessarily mean-spirited either. And of course, it's all CGI animals anyway, so it's like it's not as if animals were harmed. But it is dark, and I think because it is dark, it's also very emotional. And I think that the stuff with Rocket really human. I mean, I think it does one of the better jobs in the MCU of taking a character and like really giving you a totally different side of that character that not only provides context for how they are the way that they are, but also gives you you're almost instantly thrown into a higher level of empathy for this character based on the legwork that they do throughout it. I think that this is also the best example of James Gunn sort of firing on all cylinders in terms of the stuff that has been like the moving parts of a Guardians movie. I think that the humor works really well. I think like the MVP, in my opinion, the MVP of the movie is Pom Klementif, who plays Mantis, who I think Mantis has like the funniest stuff in the movie. A lot of really great reactionary stuff, especially playing off of Drax. There's a great scene where she gets Drax to say something that makes more sense than usual, and like there's some great cutaways to her in the background for that. And I really like that interplay. So I think the humor works really well. I think that it really plays up the music part of it, and I think that these are like the best needle drops of the series so far. I think that it utilizes. I think one of the better scenes in the movies is in the third act, where you get a sort of. There in each movie, I think there's been one scene that's like a one shot of every Guardian kicking ass, and this one is done till No Sleep Till Brooklyn, the Beastie Boys song.
Thank God it's not Sabotage, by the way. I love Sabotage, but please stop.
Yeah, and I think that scene is really great. I think there's a lot of great like musical usage within it. I think that it hits the emotional beats without being overly schmaltzy. I think that I don't want to get too bogged down with the details of what goes on, but I do think that there is like the tiniest bit of manipulation in the execution of one piece of the story. I think that I think again people may differ on that. I think that it's a little bit of a little bit of emotional manipulation, but I think.
You mean like we're getting a final chapter here, right?
Right.
And maybe you expect something to happen.
Yes, and I think that given what actually takes place and like what you actually see take place within the movie, I actually think that like it all pays off, and I think it works. I just think that there could be another version of it that could work better or be a little bit more effective. I think that it's not without its problems. I mean, I think, most characters get a really good arc. Again, I think there's a good Drax arc in here. I think that Rocket's arc is obviously great. I don't necessarily love the Quill and Gamora thing. I think that specifically the Quill side of thing, which is like him trying to reconcile, losing a version of this character that he knew. I think that the Gamora, like, understanding the concept of, like, the team and the family element of it, like, I think that works a little bit better than, like, them reconciling it. So I actually think that Peter Quill and who I guess, can we even call him Star-Lord, because the mask is never on in the movie, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't. It's gonna be. That was something I was gonna mention, that you never see his without the face. I'm sorry, you never see him, like, his face is never covered anymore.
Yeah, which was like a deliberate decision and an interesting one, but I actually think that he has one of the least interesting parts of the movie, in my opinion. I think there's so much more interesting stuff going on there. And then I think it runs into a problem with, and this is a common Marvel issue with villains, where you have two villains. You have Adam Warlock and like his mom and that side of things, and then you have the High Evolutionary, who is the person who was kind of like in charge of the stuff that happened to Rocket. And I think they're just redundant. I mean, I think, obviously, you'll know why Adam Warlock is there by the end of the movie, but those characters seem a little bit redundant, and I think the High Evolutionary is a little bit like comic booky high level of evil.
Well, like it's clearly he's the main villain. Adam Warlock, if you remember, maybe you don't, was set up at the end of Guardians 2, like in the post-credits thing. And that's the one thing that feels like this kind of studio dropping in something to use for later. That's the one thing in the movie. And I don't think it's totally unsuccessful, but I do agree that it doesn't have the same sort of payoff that it should.
Yeah, for sure. And so, all that to be said, one other nitpick. I think that there is a plot point that becomes resolved about 2/3 into the movie. And I think after that point is resolved, there's like a 10-minute chunk of the movie, right? Like leading up to like the sabotage, or it's not the sabotage.
No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
The No Sleep Till Brooklyn scene. The like 10 minutes before that happened between like the resolution and that scene, I think I tuned out a little bit. I felt like the after this thing got resolved, I found it difficult to care about the next stuff that was happening. I think that is where the tonal shift kind of got to me a little bit. I know that there's been some talk about the tonal shifts here. That's when it did get to me, but I do think that it picks up strongly and finishes mostly strongly. So, that being said, I definitely think that it is a welcome breath of fresh air for these Marvel movies, that the fatigue was really setting in for me. Especially coming off of Quantumania, which I feel like was one of the worst of the movies, especially the worst since like the early stuff. And this is a shot in the arm that I think is much needed. And I think, slightly unfortunate for Marvel that James Gunn seems to have finally gotten the recipe right on his way out, and potentially like maybe promising for DC, having him head into that, having kind of nailed it with this.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on most of that. I do think I think this is the best of these Guardians projects. I think the first one is really good. We talked about that. I don't remember if we talked about it on this show or not, but I'm not a huge fan of Guardians 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You didn't see the Christmas special, right? The holiday special. It didn't sit right with me, and I don't know why. Maybe I need to revisit it. But man, this one just fucking hit for me right away, and I knew watching it, I was like, man, this is the best thing Marvel's done. It's an easy thing to say since Endgame, but that is kind of the high point. And even Endgame, like, it's just sort of a relentless ride.
Yeah,
that
I think I know we talked about it, but I think Infinity War is better than Endgame. I really love Infinity War.
Yeah, Endgame is very crowd pleasing. Endgame and No Way Home are both very, very entertaining movies. They're both like bulletproof crowd pleasing movies. I think Infinity War, while I'm not crazy about it sort of being half a movie, I think it is probably a better storyline because it's essentially a Thanos movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the best thing since that. And like you said, this is, I think, Gunn perfecting that recipe for Guardians of the Galaxy. I do feel, and he's commented on it too, that he's rather annoyed with having to clean up some of the stuff from Infinity War, Endgame, which saw, Gamora being redone, Gamora being a past version of herself. And then when they were stuck with Thor, which thankfully got resolved in about 10 minutes of the worst part of, of Love and Thunder. This is a departure from anything that's really come before it. So much of the story told in flashbacks about Rocket's origin, which you mentioned Palm Clementif being the MVP of the movie. I mean, Rocket Raccoon and Bradley Cooper, really, this is their movie. This is a Rocket Raccoon movie, and son of a bitch, if it's not affecting his shit. There's some close-ups of, speaking of Quantumania and how terrible it was, there's some close-ups of the raccoon face that are clearly, not clearly, but it's CGI. It looks so good.
Yeah.
In comparison to everything else that came in Quantumania, that it's baffling that these are two movies produced by the same studio. Clearly the effort was put into Guardians 3 as opposed to Quantumania, because I guess maybe they've realized they had just a dud on their hands. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is how these movies should be done, and that this is Gunn's swan song for the MCU is kind of disheartening. I'm not the biggest fan of his, what he says about the movies. I feel like he's a little up his own ass sometimes. Mm-hmm. That he mentioned, the stuff that he mentioned before, with Groot being not Groot anymore, being a new Groot. I don't think that holds over to this movie. It was one of those things that was said 6 years ago that no one really remembers. His idea that Star-Lord wouldn't have punched Thanos, I disagree with. That's been a recent one.
Yeah.
But man, he fucking nails it. And this movie was so much fun for me. I agree with you. Adam Warlock's stuff is a little shoehorned in. I do think you mentioned that the resolution that happens kind of right before the climax of the movie, and that sort of 10 minutes where it's a little free floating. I just feel like the movie's indulgent as shit. And I think it's okay. I don't mind it. It's got a bit of a victory lap feel to it. I mean, it ends with a fucking dance party, which is kind of not exactly what you would expect from a Marvel movie, but exactly what I expected from this movie. Mm-hmm. It has a pretty tidy resolution for everybody. This could be the last Guardians movie and it would be okay. I think that it gives some characters, like you said, Mantis gets some real time to shine here. I love Drax in this movie. It sucks that I think he's done too. I think Zoe Saldana and Dave Bautista are both done.
They're both done, yes.
Gamora gets a little bit of a short shrift here, but that was by, lieu of where the character was left after Endgame. For being number 32 in this long-running series, it's the most standalone thing we've seen in shit. I don't know. When was the last thing this standalone? Probably the first Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, or Eternals, for better or worse.
Yeah. But man, this just really hit me the right way, and it just really landed, and I had such a good time with it.
Yeah.
Which is something I haven't had to been able to say in so long.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work, and I think a lot of the Marvel movies that we've seen in recent memory have felt like work. Especially. Yeah, go ahead.
Just think about Quantumania. Not only a bad movie, but you had to have seen Loki.
Right. Doctor Strange, you would have to seen WandaVision.
And I didn't mind Doctor Strange enough. I think the Raimi thing really pushed it over the finish line for me. What was before that? Eternals. Who gives a shit? Shang-Chi, fine. I liked it enough for the first half. I think it got a little bogged down with a bunch of CGI nonsense in the second. What was before that? Was it No Way Home? I don't remember all the movies.
I don't remember the order, but yeah.
No Way Home was in there somewhere. Black Widow, a prequel. Who gave a shit?
Yeah.
Not to diminish any characters in the movie, but just the way these movies have been delivered, and the homework that's required for them has been somewhat of a chore. And this is the first time, again, it doesn't feel like maybe you should have seen the holiday special to kind of get the gist of why they were on Nowhere and where the Cosmo the dog came in and Kraglin and all this other stuff. But in the end, it just sort of explains it all itself. And you just feel like you kind of, this is the most lived in thing that we've seen in so long.
Yeah. And I also feel like you could drop, I mean, you might be a little lost, but I feel like you could drop into this movie and like know at least what's going on versus like trying to drop into, Quantumania and being like, what the hell is happening in this thing?
Why is Ant-Man here? What the fuck?
And also, speaking of that sentence you just said, we also, let's not downplay, we get the first Marvel F-bomb, MCU F-bomb, I should say.
First MCU F-bomb. In a scene, I personally really like that sequence where they're on this sort of alternative Earth. It's in the trailers. You've seen it, where it's like animal people that have populated this counter Earth, it's called.
And it happens, and if you've been following, it's coming, but it happens in a very unexpected place where even though I knew it was coming, I did not think it was happening at the moment that it happens. And
I actually saw the clip beforehand.
Oh, really?
It was released online, bleeped out, of course, but yeah, it's a very funny, just sort of character moment. And I guess that's the thing that's really kind of, driving home my love for this is there's so many character moments, which we haven't really seen in so long.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think Captain America, The Winter Soldier is tops for these Marvel films. I think this is probably my second, in terms of just pure construction of a film, beginning to end, self-contained, small stakes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the recency bias is kicking in, but I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's top 5 to 7. It's definitely in the top tier. I mean, I think, and again, and also too, I think it just goes to show that I feel like in recent history, especially when to some degree in Endgame, to some degree in the Thor movie, I feel like maybe they haven't been utilizing Chris Pratt in the way he probably should be used. And I feel like getting James Gunn back here, even though I don't love the Peter Quill story as much, I still think that it lets Chris Pratt be, sort of the charismatic, enjoyable, funny presence that he has the capacity to be. And especially watching him, and everything about him that people say aside, I think that he's a super funny, charming actor. And I think that to see him, the life stripped from him in that Jurassic World, hat notwithstanding, franchise, was just sad to see. And I think that this really allows him to kind of recapture that.
Yeah, everybody was very excited when he got cast because he was coming off of Parks and Rec, which everybody loved him in. This was his first big role, and then kind of Jurassic World came along the year after in 2015 and just mushed him into this action hero nothing. And he hasn't really escaped that. Worst Chris stuff notwithstanding, I think it's a bad rap. I think that he's, I don't know, to his credit, he's never said anything wrong. He's never opened his mouth to make you feel like he's an asshole. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know. What I will hold him accountable for is being in these terrible action movies. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't have said no to Jurassic World either. Right. But that he's kind of getting stuck in that mold with stuff like the Tomorrow War. And I don't even know what the fuck that Amazon series is where he basically plays the same role, some kind of lunkhead GI guy. I don't know. But these movies really give him something to shine. I don't think he did so well in the second one. It kind of bogged him down with daddy issues. But this one, like you said, he delivers that first F-bomb, and it's great. There's a scene where he comes face to face with High Evolutionary where he's really funny. I do think it really gives, this is kind of his return to being the Chris Pratt that we love, not the Mario voicing.
Yeah.
But why do people hate him so much? Is it because of the Jurassic World, or you think it's because of the rumors about him being sort of belonging to a church that's intolerant?
I believe it's the latter.
Yeah.
I think that sort of, and again, he hasn't And I think even he's gone on record as
says he wasn't a member of that church.
Right. Yeah. But people took it and ran with it. I mean, I think that, it's a touchy subject because that is like, like objectively a bad thing to be associated with.
Sure.
And but it's not as if he is like, again, like to your point, he's never vocally voiced support for those issues, or he's never vocally been like anti-gay or anti-trans or anything like that. And so, it's like kind of like a guilt by association.
Well, there is like the thing too where he was divorced on a Ferris.
Oh yeah.
And people like with John Mulaney as well, sort of threw him under the bus for that, which I don't quite understand, but I'm aggressively online, but I'm not that aggressively online.
There was also something that he said about his new child that I think people had a bad faith interpretation.
An extremely bad faith interpretation, and that's why I don't buy into this worst Chris thing.
Yeah.
Our former co-host Jocelyn commented on my fucking Instagram post about Jocelyn. I'm calling you out.
She's also anti-John Mulaney.
Oh, really? Didn't know that. Anywho.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, I think again, as a performer, I personal stuff notwithstanding, I really like him, and I feel like he does well. And again, like to your point, I just want to reiterate, I agree totally on the character bits, because you get a little bit from a side of Drax that you haven't seen, especially not since the first one, I don't think. And suddenly that character becomes like extremely well-rounded in just like one scene, where suddenly a lot clicks together. Again, I like and I like the resolution for Mantis in the movie too. That it makes a lot of sense and it really works. The Groot stuff, whatever. Groot is just a background character for me, but
yeah.
But everyone does get a little bit of an arc in a story, and for balancing that amount of characters, it works well. Like, do I think it could have been a little bit more simple and streamlined? Yes, I think that it could be even more simple than it is and benefit from it. But that being said, I mean, again, like we've been saying, it is the most straightforward, simple Marvel movie maybe ever. and I think it benefits greatly from it.
I mean, you probably have to go back to Iron Man, quite frankly, to get something that had nothing.
Or Captain America, the First Avenger.
Maybe, but that one ends with him. That one has Howard Stark in it. Like, that one has like little tidbits laid inside of it. I mean, I guess straightforward story wise, I guess I'm conflating connections to other movies with problems with the story, because
the majority of First Avenger takes place in like a different time frame than everything else. So,
you're not. It's not. We forgot to mention Black Panther: Wakanda Forever and Thor Ragnarok. Sorry, Thor: Love and Thunder. But Wakanda Forever is another one of those is littered with shit that is setting up others, which I wasn't a big fan of the movie anyway. But the Ironheart character is one that's just crammed in there. Mm-hmm. Adam Warlock is a little bit more understandable, and it feels a little more like a James Gunn resolution for that character. But anyway, what's your grade for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Cody?
Yeah, so I mean, just to put a bow on this, I think it's easily the best Marvel movie since Infinity War and Endgame. And I think that it is also the best of the Guardians movies. I mean, I like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but it is a lot of sort of like, introduction and getting to know these characters. And it does feel, maybe like there is that little bit of like James Gunn put on there. The second, I think, doesn't really work very well, but this seems to be like the alchemy for a Guardians movie is exactly right. And again, it brings the humor, it brings the kind of silly, over the top James Gunn sensibility to it. It's weird. There's a lot of like weird character design, like planet design and stuff. The needle drops of the music are there that you've come to expect, and I think firing on all cylinders. There are a few things that I think keep it from like truly being like amazing, but I do give this a very solid B.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with B plus, just because it's. I feel like there's a little bit of bloat to it. I feel like there's a little bit of, with the Adam Warlock stuff, a little bit of stuff that just doesn't quite mesh with the story. But goddamn, was it the most fun I've had at one of these Marvel movies in a long time? Probably like superhero movies in general. But yeah, best of the Guardians movies, best of these Marvel movies since at least Infinity War Endgame. Probably going further back, even before that too. Maybe since like, even Black Panther is great, but has kind of a wonky resolution.
Winter Soldier, do you think it's the best since then?
Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, just strictly speaking on the self-contained aspect of it. And maybe that's years of having to do homework and waiting for the next thing. Maybe that's kind of driven me down, like beaten me down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one thing for elements of that, but we went through a period of time, and I think even like Quantumania is only that. It is only setting stuff up in the future. It could have been, again, like it's only to introduce Kang, who is going to later feature down that thing. And so to get something that feels like there's almost none of it, is, especially because it does, if it functions as a last chapter, it doesn't have to connect to anything, and they take that to heart.
And it even has like a nice little coda that could be, a setup for what comes next, but it doesn't feel like here's what's coming next. It feels like here's what is naturally an extension of this story.
Right.
And there's two post-credit scenes, one of them I'm speaking of, and the other one, which is just another little character moment. Like it's not like, oh shit, here's what's coming next. And while that was thrilling for a while, it's gotten to be really, really a drag. And I can't say that I didn't ask for this. Because we all loved that slop at first. We all love like, oh shit, here comes Thor, or oh shit, here comes Captain America, or whatever the fuck. But now it's like, well, did you watch WandaVision? Hope you did, because now this is the point of this. And then, oh wait, now there's another movie coming after this that we got to set up. Or hold on, this character is going to appear in a TV show. That's why she's got only like 10 lines in this movie, but given a huge fucking push in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just really refreshing. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, Cody, I have no idea what's happening. I know it's busy.
We are loaded with stuff. So no promises on which one of these we will get to, but there's at least 5 movies that are in the running. We have, one that we will for sure cover because we've both seen at this point, which is still a Michael J. Fox movie. And then we also have some combination of Hypnotic, which is the new Robert Rodriguez, Ben Affleck movie. There's
Shot in Austin, yeah.
There's also Fool's Paradise, which is the directorial debut of Charlie Day. We have Blackberry, a movie that I saw at South by Southwest that was one of my favorites at South by Southwest, so I do hope we cover that one. We also have potentially Chop and Steal, which is a movie that I saw at Fantastic Fest that I think you've been kind of interested to see.
Yes.
And that we may be able to cover. And I think that's it. I think that's 5 movies. And so some combination of those, one of which we've already seen, which should be easy. And so, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Eager to talk about the Michael J. Fox doc. You saw it at Sundance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I saw it at South by with Michael J. Fox in attendance. I believe I talked about it a little bit, but yeah. All right. If you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter at CineSnob, Facebook, CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/CineSnob. Anything else, Cody, before we wrap this bad boy up? I wish we could play like a needle drop and not get dinged.
Yeah.
So we could go out like Guardians of the Galaxy with a dance party or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that would be nice, but no, unfortunately, we'll just end with a whimper here because that's all I have. Ramble Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, if you are down with that.
Yeah. All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.